Hello, everybody, and today I want to talk about drugs, and specifically, I want to talk about decriminalizing drugs. And this is through my perspective, and it's something that's going to get people a little bit off because I do consider myself a conservative. And often, when you say you're conservative, that means that you would be against drugs, specifically if you are an evangelical side of it. However, I do not go along with that point of view. For me specifically, I'm a conservative in the regards of I want the federal government out of every practice possible. I do not want them within our own lives. I want them to be as limited as possible. So when it comes to drugs, for example, I think, especially what they did in Oregon, even though I think Oregon is ran fairly poorly, they have went down the correct path in decriminalizing all drugs. I think this is a fantastic step forward because it allows individuals to have opportunities to seek out help. In this regard, there is no stigma per se in going out and doing a drug because of whatever reason, right? Whatever, be it environment that you grow up in, or be it through forced because of culture or whatever it may or may not be, you can now seek out help. You're not stuck down the path of addiction because you ended up doing a drug once, you have an addictive personality, then that's it. You can now go and get help. There's no criminal penalty behind it. The second part is, again, it's a change in the culture that we have in the United States. Now, yes, there's some things that the culture is getting too politically correct. For example, oftentimes you are outcasted for having a different point of view from the majority, and that is bad. But a good point of view is this destigmatization of drugs, for example, where it's okay to do these drugs, because a lot of times kids are doing it because it is taboo. I think it's better to have these drugs be legalized so that way kids, maybe they do try to dabble in it, but they don't feel the need to anymore. Speaking from my friends' perspectives, they often talked about how the reason why they started to drink before they were of legal age was because of the taboo nature behind it. And people that I've talked to that have done harder drugs have often did it because there is a taboo nature. Not saying again that this is all cases, and it's stupid to call it all cases. However, it is just one of the cases behind it, right? You take off the mist, the allure of it all. And that is important to really kind of understand and hit home about. So again, we have the ability to get help. It destigmatizes it in our culture, but more importantly, it takes a hit towards the criminal market, especially if there is safe, productive means to have these drugs come about, manufactured safely, because you can regulate it properly. Oftentimes, you can get cut off at a bar because the bartender thinks you're drinking too much, compared to if you're over in, let's say, Kentucky in the Appalachians, and you get some good old moonshine made off of someone's homemade brewery out back, up in the hills and mountains. Well, you might go blind. So it's better to have this regulation there that we see where someone can say, hey man, you know what, that's probably too much. You should go seek out help instead of saying, hey, you're going to go to jail. It is better to have it legalized, again, not just for having quantities be set, a regulatory amount, but also it'll impact the black market side. Now, what does that mean in the long-term scale of just Oregon? Not really too much, because again, you got 49 other states that all have it criminalized in some excess degree. But I think it's a good step forward for the United States, specifically because we can see the results in Oregon and see how it plays out. If this does end up being a terrible move, then I, for example, will change my opinion and be, hey, you know what, I think these drugs should be criminalized. I think there should be harsh punishments or whatever. But it's a good staging ground to see, hey, what does each state want to do, right? And this leads me to my final point is I'm really happy that Oregon took this leap because it kind of helps promote a states' right issue. I wish every state had their own stance on different issues, specifically comes to drugs, but even gay marriage, instead of having a federal wide appeal, right? I don't want the federal government to step into my life and to say, hey, if I'm a pastor, for example, I have to wed a couple A if they are homosexual, and I have to wed couple B if they're a straight couple. In this regard, I don't want the federal government to tell me who I have to marry. I want to be able to choose my own free will and not go to jail, for example. Same thing here is I want to have the ability to choose, and I get to choose by choosing where I live. So if I don't want to have all drugs decriminalized, well, I won't live in Oregon, right? I will choose a different state, probably a state that will never do that. Let's say like in Oklahoma, which voted pretty much all red in the 2020 election, or somewhere like Kentucky, which was mostly red, or etc. I would go to those locations if I didn't want those values. That's the beauty of the United States, is that you can choose where you want to live with relative ease. Yes, there's a monetary limit that's going to gatekeep you a bit, but you have the ability to go, okay, well, this state is far too progressive or far too conservative for me, conservative in a more evangelical sense. I want to go over to this state, or I want somewhere in between. And we have 50 states, and probably more in the future, where you can choose, hey, I want to go here, here, or here. And it's very important to have that ability to choose instead of having to get all these different requirements to move into a new country. You have that ease of access. So I think this is a great first step forward. Decriminalizing all drugs opens up a lot of different pathways, not just for rehabilitation, but also it helps undermine the black market, which means then you're undermining a lot of illegal businesses or gangs or stuff like this. And then overall, it helps promote state rights. This is a great issue. It also adds state diversity, where we're not underneath one federal government that dictates everything, because you have the king on top with his cronies filling the House and the legislative with the Supreme Court. No, instead you have, yes, you'll still have a very strong federal government, which we have right now, but each state still can match it. And this is a good step going forward, as long as the federal government doesn't push it, which I have a feeling they will, sadly. But this is a good step forward to help, again, reassert state rights, because I feel like state rights over the past, well, since the Civil War and even before, have been going away. And we've been entering more of a centralized government, and that's bad for us common folk. Anyways, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Please let me know down in the comment section below what you think about decriminalization of drugs and how you think it will impact America's future, because again, I'm open up to knowing different perspectives. We could very much be going down a bad path having all these drugs be decriminalized. But do please leave a like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. God bless America.